The mockery of Earth's prototypes. The Galactic Empire was a force unlike any other in the universe. It had stretched its reach across countless star systems, crushed rebellions, and toppled civilizations. Their fleets were vast, their technologies beyond anything most species could imagine. To them, Earth was little more than a speck in the vastness of space, a primitive, insignificant planet that had nothing to offer. For years, the Galactic Empire had looked down upon Earth, mocking its efforts to build a fleet that could challenge their dominance. The Empire's generals and leaders laughed whenever Earth's military engineers presented their designs. Earth had no experience in space warfare. Their ships were outdated, their weapons weak, and their technology nowhere near what the Empire possessed. It was a simple fact. The Empire was far superior, and Earth's military was nothing more than a joke. But Earth wasn't ready to give up. Despite all the mockery, the ridicule, and the doubts from all corners of the galaxy, humans did what they always did. They persevered. They worked in silence, refusing to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The few ships Earth had in space were nothing compared to the Empire's mighty fleet. But humanity wasn't just making ships. They were designing something different, something revolutionary. In a hidden facility far below the surface of Earth's largest military base, a team of the brightest minds worked around the clock. They knew that to survive against the Empire, they needed more than just speed or firepower. They needed to think outside the box. They needed something that would take the Empire by surprise, something that could shake them to their very core. Meanwhile, the Empire continued to make fun of Earth's attempts. High-ranking officers would gather in their luxurious command rooms, sipping alien beverages as they watched Earth's latest designs come through. They laughed at the Vanguard-class ships, calling them nothing more than glorified cargo vessels with a few weapons strapped on. How could something so simple stand a chance against the might of the Empire? One such officer, Admiral Vorik, led the Empire's fleet stationed near the Sol system. He was known for his cruelty and his condescending attitude toward lesser species. He had seen Earth's designs, and they filled him with nothing but amusement. "These humans think they can challenge us," he had said, laughing to his subordinates. "We have fleets that could destroy their planet in a blink of an eye. These pathetic little ships are a joke." But even as he mocked Earth, a quiet tension began to build on Earth itself. The military leaders, the scientists, and the engineers knew something that the Empire didn't. They had a ship, a prototype, that was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. The ship, named Vanguard, was the culmination of years of research, innovation, and secrecy. It was designed to be far more than just a warship. It had advanced shields capable of withstanding even the Empire's most devastating weapons. Its engines were faster than anything the Empire had, allowing it to outmaneuver even the most agile fighters. And its weapon systems. They were a mystery. No one outside the project knew what the Vanguard was truly capable of. But the hope was that it would be enough to turn the tide if Earth was ever faced with the Empire's wrath. On Earth, though, all that was visible to the public were the smaller, outdated ships being launched into space, ships that the Empire ridiculed. The Vanguard was kept a secret, hidden away from the prying eyes of the Empire and the galaxy at large. The ship was Earth's last hope, and no one could afford to reveal its power prematurely. But rumors began to spread. Whispers of a new weapon, a new kind of ship, reached the Empire's spies. They couldn't confirm anything, but the rumors were enough to cause concern. Still, the Empire refused to take Earth seriously. To them, the idea that a tiny primitive planet could create something capable of challenging their fleet was laughable. It was beyond their comprehension. The Empire continued to mock Earth's efforts, even as the Vanguard was nearing its final stages of completion. Meanwhile, the humans working on the prototype knew that time was running out. They couldn't waste any more time hiding. Soon, the Empire would come, and when they did, Earth would need to be ready. But the galaxy didn't know what was coming. The Empire certainly didn't. They continued to underestimate Earth, dismissing any rumors or reports about new weapons as exaggerations. They were far too confident in their superiority, too sure of their ultimate victory. As the final touches were placed on the Vanguard, the scientists and engineers could only hope that they had done enough. They had spent countless hours designing, testing, and building the ship, knowing that if the Empire attacked, this would be humanity's only chance for survival. The pressure was immense, but they were determined. They weren't just building a ship, they were building humanity's future. But little did the Empire know, they were about to face a force unlike any they had ever encountered. The laughable ships of Earth were about to give way to something far more powerful, and when the Empire finally did arrive, they would soon realize that the joke was on them. The Vanguard was ready. The mockery of Earth's prototypes was about to come to an end, and a new chapter in the galaxy's history was about to begin. As the Empire's mockery of Earth's prototypes continued, the people on Earth were unaware of how close the galaxy was to erupting into war. To them, the Galactic Empire was a distant, almost mythical force. The stories of their power, their dominance over countless star systems, were nothing more than rumors, whispers of a terrifying presence that loomed over their future. Yet, deep in the heart of Earth's military circles, preparations were underway. Preparations that would defy everything the Empire thought it knew about humanity. The Vanguard was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of human resolve, an answer to the Empire's arrogance. Earth's leaders had known that they were outmatched. They were a small, relatively new species in the grand scheme of galactic history. But that was not something they intended to use as an excuse. Instead, they used it as fuel. The engineers, the scientists, the soldiers, they all understood the stakes. If Earth didn't fight back now, they would be doomed to live under the Empire's crushing boot forever. The construction of the Vanguard had been shrouded in secrecy. Only a handful of people knew its true capabilities. Even the highest-ranking officials in Earth's military weren't fully aware of what this new ship was capable of. It had been designed in complete isolation, far from the prying eyes of spies or the Empire's ever-watchful censors. The idea was simple: create something so advanced, so unexpected, that it would catch the Empire off guard. But secrecy came at a cost. The scientists and engineers working on the Vanguard lived under constant pressure, knowing that every moment was critical. Earth's fragile peace was about to end, and they had to be ready. There was no room for mistakes. The very survival of humanity rested on the success of this project. While the Vanguard's construction was nearing completion, Earth's public-facing military efforts remained humble. Their fleets were small, outdated, and vastly inferior to the might of the Empire. Every time a new ship was launched into space, it was met with laughter from the Empire's commanders. The ships were slow, clunky, and unarmed compared to the Empire's sleek, powerful warships. The Empire saw Earth's ships as little more than floating targets, easy to destroy if they ever came into contact with a real threat. Admiral Vorak, who commanded the Empire's forces stationed near the Sol system, was among the loudest in his ridicule. He had seen Earth's latest designs and dismissed them as a joke. "Let them play at war," he would say. "They might build toys, but they'll never challenge the Empire." But even as the Empire scoffed at Earth's weak fleets, a storm was brewing. The Vanguard was being prepared for a test that would demonstrate to the galaxy that the Empire's dismissive attitude had been a grave mistake. The ship was being loaded with its weapons and its secret weapon, a new kind of energy shield designed to withstand the full force of the Empire's advanced weapons. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol, a challenge to the Empire's superiority. Meanwhile, Earth's military leaders watched nervously as the political climate began to change. The Empire had been moving closer and closer to Earth's borders, and whispers of an impending invasion spread like wildfire. The Empire had been watching Earth for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. The humans knew that time was running out. Earth had to be ready, and the Vanguard had to succeed. There could be no hesitation, no second chances. In the months leading up to the final test of the Vanguard, the rest of Earth's military prepared as best they could. They knew that their small, outdated fleets were no match for the Empire's immense power, but that didn't stop them from preparing. Every soldier, every pilot, every engineer had one singular focus: survival. They trained harder than ever before, pushing their limits, understanding that this wasn't just about victory. It was about survival. The pressure weighed heavily on the Vanguard's crew. They knew they would be the first to take on the Empire, the first to face the wrath of their overwhelming fleet. Yet, they remained calm. They trusted the Vanguard, and they trusted each other. The moment they set sail would be the moment that Earth's future would be decided. As the test flight of the Vanguard approached, Earth's leaders gathered in a secure command center, anxiously watching as the ship prepared for its first official outing. If the Vanguard succeeded in its test, it would be sent into space, ready to challenge the Empire. If it failed, well, Earth's last hope would be gone. There was no backup plan. For the crew of the Vanguard, this test wasn't just about the ship. It was about proving something to the galaxy. Earth had been underestimated for too long. Now they would show the Empire just how wrong they were, but there was no way to know how the test would go. They couldn't predict how the ship's new systems would perform under real combat conditions. It was a gamble. As the final countdown began, the tension in the air was palpable. Everyone knew what was at stake. If the Vanguard succeeded, Earth would have a fighting chance. If it failed, Earth would be nothing more than another conquered world. There could be no turning back. The ship's engines roared to life, and the Vanguard slowly lifted off from the ground, its sleek form rising into the sky. The test was about to begin, and the entire fate of Earth and the galaxy hung in the balance. But even as the Vanguard soared into space, a single question lingered in everyone's mind. Would this new weapon be enough to take on the Empire's might? The Vanguard's engines hummed steadily, cutting through the silence of space as it moved farther from Earth's atmosphere. The test was no longer just a demonstration. It had become a statement. As the ship ascended into the vast emptiness of space, every crew member on board could feel the weight of their mission. This wasn't just a trial run. This was humanity's declaration that they wouldn't go down without a fight. Commander Rachel Torres, the Vanguard's captain, stood at the helm, her fingers lightly grazing the control panel. She glanced around at her crew, all of them focused, their faces tense but determined. The crew was composed of Earth's finest, the ones chosen for this monumental mission. None of them had ever experienced combat against a real enemy, but they had all trained for it. This was their moment to prove their worth. "Initiating shield test," said Lieutenant Marcus, the ship's chief engineer. His voice was steady, but the anxiety in his eyes betrayed his calm demeanor. They all knew how risky this was. If the Vanguard's new energy shield didn't work as expected, they would be vulnerable to any strike, and they would have no chance of surviving a real attack from the Empire. "Ready, Lieutenant," Commander Torres responded, her voice betraying none of her nerves. She stared at the star-streaked horizon ahead, her mind racing through the implications of their mission. Everything rested on this test. "Shields up," Marcus confirmed, pressing a button with a swift motion. A low hum filled the command deck, and the ship's shields came to life, glowing a faint blue as they enveloped the Vanguard. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Torres glanced at her tactical officer, Sergeant Lee, who monitored the systems with sharp focus. "Are we fully operational?" she asked. "Yes, Captain," Lee replied, his eyes glued to the readings. "All systems are online. Weapons, shields, engines, everything's green across the board." The silence was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems as the Vanguard cruised through space. As they neared the testing area, a small asteroid belt loomed in the distance. It was a perfect location for the test, away from any populated systems and isolated from the Empire's watchful eyes. This would be a safe place to gauge the ship's abilities before any real engagement took place. But as they approached the belt, Torres couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. She had seen countless simulations of what could go wrong. It was a test, yes, but it felt far too real. What if something went wrong? What if this ship, this last hope for humanity, failed? The tension in the air was thick, and everyone on board the Vanguard shared the same unspoken fear. The Empire's fleet could be lurking just beyond the edge of the asteroid belt, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Vanguard was meant to be Earth's answer to their invaders, but there was no guarantee that it would succeed. There was no second chance. "Locking target," announced Lieutenant Nash, the ship's weapons officer. The asteroids in the belt were approaching quickly, and he was preparing to fire a test shot. If the weapons systems were as powerful as Earth's engineers believed, this test could prove that they had created something that could stand up to the might of the Empire. But they needed to be sure. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The command was given, and a powerful beam of energy shot out from the Vanguard's main cannon. It sliced through the closest asteroid with ease, sending it shattering into dust. The crew cheered, but Torres remained calm, her face hard as stone. That was a success, but it was just a small step. "Adjusting trajectory," Marcus said. "Prepare for full impact tests. We need to push the shields to their limit." Torres nodded. The crew was ready. They knew what they had to do. They were about to test how much damage the Vanguard could take. As the ship moved deeper into the asteroid belt, the tension continued to rise. Every crew member was on edge, but no one dared to show it. There was no room for fear. Not now. Not after everything they had worked for. "Brace for impact," Torres ordered. Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. This was the moment of truth. The Vanguard's shields had to hold. If they didn't, everything would come crashing down. The first asteroid slammed into the Vanguard's shields with terrifying force. The ship jolted violently, but the shields held firm. The energy around them flickered, but the ship remained intact. The crew let out a collective breath, but they all knew this was only the beginning. One after another, larger and larger asteroids barreled toward the Vanguard. Each time, the ship shuddered as the shields absorbed the blows. Some crew members flinched, but none of them spoke. They had to endure. They had to hold on. Then, the largest asteroid of them all appeared, tumbling out of the belt's depths and heading straight for the Vanguard. It was massive, easily the size of a city block, and its surface was jagged and rough, a solid mass of rock and debris. "Prepare for maximum impact," Marcus called. "All shields at full power." "Maximum power," Torres ordered. The Vanguard's shields surged, glowing brightly as they adjusted to handle the asteroid's mass. The crew watched in tense silence as the massive rock neared. They were about to face their greatest challenge yet. When the asteroid struck, it was like a thunderclap in space. The Vanguard rocked violently, but the shields held. The ship groaned under the stress, and for a moment, it seemed as if they might not survive the impact. But then the shields stabilized, and the ship's systems hummed back to life. "Shields are holding," Lieutenant Nash reported, his voice full of relief. "We did it," Marcus said, a smile breaking through his normally serious expression. The crew erupted into cheers. It was a victory. They had passed the first test. But Commander Torres only allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The real test was still to come. If the Empire's fleet discovered them here, they wouldn't be able to hide. They had to move fast, and they had to move smart. The Vanguard had held up against the asteroid barrage, but it was only a taste of what was to come. And now it was time to take their ship back to Earth and prepare for the real fight ahead. After the successful test, Commander Rachel Torres and her crew felt a rare sense of relief. They had passed their trial, and the Vanguard had proven its worth. But that peace was short-lived. They all knew it was only a matter of time before the real battle began. The Empire wouldn't let a single ship, no matter how advanced, stand in their way. Back on Earth, the High Command was celebrating, but the mood on the Vanguard was far more somber. The test was a victory, yes, but it was a victory in isolation. The real war would test every inch of their strength and skill. No one knew what would happen when they faced the Empire's full might. Commander Torres paced the command deck, her mind racing. "Lieutenant Nash," she called, "are we receiving any new signals from the Empire?" Nash, the weapons officer, shook his head. "Nothing yet, Commander, but we're far from the Empire's core systems. They won't notice us until we're much closer." Torres nodded. It made sense. The Empire's fleet, after all, was vast. Millions of ships, each one more advanced than the last. But that didn't matter. They had something the Empire hadn't counted on: humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to surprise. If the Vanguard could survive the test, it could survive a fight. It would have to. "Keep scanning," she ordered. "We can't afford to be complacent. We need to stay one step ahead." Just as she finished speaking, the communications officer, Ensign Hall, interrupted her thoughts. "Commander, we got a signal. It's faint, but it's coming from the outer rim. It could be Empire ships." Torres' heart skipped a beat. "Identify the source." Now. Ensign Hall worked quickly, analyzing the signal. The tension in the room thickened with each passing second. The Vanguard's crew was on high alert, their hands hovering over controls, ready for anything. The silence stretched, and then Hall spoke again. "It's definitely them. The Empire. They found us." Commander Torres' expression hardened. She had known this moment would come. There was no avoiding it. The Empire would stop at nothing to eliminate Earth's only hope for resistance. "Sound the alert," Torres ordered. "Prepare for immediate departure. Get us out of here. Now." The Vanguard's engines roared to life as the ship began to move away from the asteroid belt, but it was too late. A bright flash of light erupted in the distance, and a fleet of massive ships appeared on their scanners. The Empire had found them, and they were closing in fast. "Enemy fleet is approaching at full speed," Sergeant Lee, the tactical officer, reported. "They're not here for negotiations. This is a full-scale attack." The Empire's fleet was a sight to behold. Dozens of massive warships, each one bristling with weapons and power. Torres knew the Empire had expected Earth to surrender, to cower in fear at the sight of their power. But they hadn't anticipated one thing: humanity's resilience. The Vanguard was alone, its crew vastly outnumbered. Yet, Torres wasn't afraid. She trusted her crew. She trusted the ship. The Vanguard wasn't just a prototype anymore. It was Earth's symbol of defiance. "Lieutenant Nash, get our weapons online. Prepare to fire as soon as they're within range," Torres ordered. "Aye, Commander," Nash replied, his fingers dancing over the control panel. The Vanguard's weapon systems powered up with a hum, ready to strike. The Empire's ships were massive, towering over the Vanguard, but Torres wasn't intimidated. She had something they didn't: the element of surprise. No one had expected a human ship to have such advanced technology. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they were about to pay the price. "Captain, enemy ships have reached range," Sergeant Lee called out. "Fire," Torres commanded, her voice cold and focused. The Vanguard's weapons roared to life, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that lit up the space around them. The first shots slammed into the lead ship of the Empire's fleet, shaking the Vanguard with their force. The Empire's ship staggered but remained intact, firing back immediately with deadly precision. The battle had begun. "Shields are holding," Marcus, the ship's engineer, reported, his voice tight with concentration. "But we're taking heavy fire. We need to return fire with everything we've got." "Give them everything, Lieutenant," Torres snapped, her eyes locked on the view screen. "Show them why they shouldn't have underestimated humanity." The Vanguard's cannons fired again, each blast more powerful than the last. The Empire's ships were strong, but the vanguard was quick, darting in and out of their fire, delivering blows that left the Empire reeling. Torres watched as one of the larger warships from the Empire's fleet began to list, its shields cracking under the pressure. The crew of the vanguard cheered, but Torres held her breath. They had made their mark, but the Empire wouldn't be defeated so easily. "Commander, they're adjusting their tactics," Sergeant Lee warned. "They're coordinating their fire. We need to be faster." Torres nodded. "Get us closer. We can't let them regroup." The vanguard surged forward, dodging blasts and returning fire with pinpoint accuracy. The sound of weapons clashing and the hum of the engines filled the command deck. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos they had prepared for. "Another ship down," Nash shouted, pointing at the view screen. One of the Empire's warships exploded in a fiery burst, sending debris scattering into space. Torres allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. They were winning. But she knew the fight wasn't over yet. The Empire wouldn't back down. They would come at them with everything they had. And Torres was ready. This was only the beginning. The battle raged on in the vast emptiness of space, a testament to the might and determination of both the vanguard and the Empire. Commander Rachel Torres stood firm at the helm, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays as the battle unfolded before her. The Empire's ships were powerful, but the vanguard had proven to be a force to be reckoned with. It had already taken down 2 of their warships, but the Empire was relentless. "Commander, they're pulling back," Sergeant Lee reported, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "It looks like they're regrouping." Torres narrowed her eyes, her mind racing. "Regrouping? No, they're not retreating. They're planning something. Prepare for the worst." The tactical display flickered as new readings appeared on the screen. Dozens of smaller ships, battle cruisers, fighters, and destroyers, began to fan out from the main fleet, forming a tight perimeter around the remaining capital ships. "This isn't over," Torres muttered, gripping the armrests of her seat. She knew the Empire would come back stronger. They had underestimated humanity once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. "Lieutenant Nash," she said, her voice firm, "are our weapons fully charged?" "Aye, Commander," Nash replied, his face tense. "All systems are online, and our cannons are ready to fire. But we're low on power, and the shields are holding. But they're weakening." Torres turned toward Marcus, the engineer. "How long can the shields last under this kind of fire?" Marcus wiped his brow, his expression grim. "A few minutes, maybe less. They're pushing us hard. If we don't take out their flagship soon, we'll be sitting ducks." Torres took a deep breath. Time was running out. She had to end this before the Empire could overwhelm them. The vanguard had proven its worth, but it needed to keep moving, keep fighting. "Prepare to engage the flagship," Torres ordered, her voice unwavering. "We'll take out their command ship and throw their entire fleet into chaos. Everyone, brace yourselves. This is going to get rough." The crew moved with precision, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the vanguard turned toward the heart of the enemy formation. The Empire's flagship loomed ahead, a massive, towering vessel surrounded by a swarm of smaller ships. Torres could see the Empire's desperation in their movements. They had lost 2 of their largest warships, and now they were guarding their most precious asset with everything they had. But Torres was determined to break through. "Full speed ahead," she commanded, and the vanguard surged forward, engines roaring with the power of humanity's determination. The Empire responded in kind. Their smaller ships swarmed around the vanguard, launching a hail of energy blasts. The vanguard dodged and weaved, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Explosions rocked the battlefield as the vanguard's cannon slammed into the Empire's fighters, disintegrating them with each shot. But there was no time to celebrate victories. The Empire's flagship opened fire, unleashing a barrage of powerful energy blasts that shook the vanguard to its core. The shields crackled under the assault, and the crew braced themselves as the ship rocked violently. "Shields at 40%. Marcus called out, his voice strained. "We won't last long if they keep this up." Torres felt the pressure mounting, but she didn't falter. This was the moment. If they could destroy the flagship, the Empire's entire fleet would fall apart. "Lieutenant Nash," Torres barked, "target the flagship's core. All weapons, fire at will." The Vanguard's cannons unleashed a series of devastating blasts, each one more powerful than the last. The Empire's flagship began to shudder, its hull cracking under the intense pressure. But it wasn't enough. The Empire's ships kept coming, determined to protect their flagship at all costs. "We're being surrounded," Sergeant Lee shouted, his voice full of urgency. "There are too many of them. We need backup." Torres' mind raced. There was no backup, no reinforcements. It was just them against the might of the Empire. She couldn't afford to back down. She couldn't afford to lose. "We won't back down," Torres said, her voice calm but full of resolve. "We've got one shot at this. Keep pushing forward. All weapons, fire everything we've got." The Vanguard's weapons fired in unison, the concentrated firepower tearing through the Empire's ships like a storm. The flagship, now badly damaged, staggered, its shields failing under the onslaught. Torres watched in silence as the ship began to crack, pieces of it disintegrating as the Vanguard's fire continued to rain down. Direct hit to the flagship's core. Nash called out, "It's going critical." Torres gripped the edge of her seat, her heart pounding. The flagship was about to explode. It was their moment of victory. But before she could even think, a massive explosion erupted in front of them. The Empire's flagship was gone, shattered into 1,000 pieces, its destruction sending a shockwave through the entire battlefield. The remaining Empire ships faltered, their coordination thrown into chaos. "Enemy flagship destroyed," Sergeant Lee shouted, a wide grin spreading across his face. "The rest of their fleet is in disarray." The Vanguard had done it. They had destroyed the Empire's flagship, throwing the entire fleet into chaos. The once proud Empire was now on the brink of defeat. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. "Don't celebrate yet," Torres warned, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "We still have a war to win." But as the Vanguard's crew cheered, they knew one thing for sure. Humanity had just delivered a blow that would echo across the galaxy. The tide of battle had shifted, but the Empire was not one to give up easily. Despite the destruction of their flagship, the remnants of their fleet began to regroup, reorganizing with frightening speed. The ships that had scattered in panic now began to form a new battle line, more dangerous than ever before. Their desperation had turned into fury, and they were determined to destroy the Vanguard, no matter the cost. Commander Rachel Torres stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The battle was far from over, and the Empire would stop at nothing to avenge the loss of their flagship. "Commander, their fleet is reforming," Lieutenant Nash reported, his voice tense. "They're going to strike back with everything they've got." Torres nodded slowly. "I knew they wouldn't go down easily. We've hurt them, but we need to finish this. This is our chance to end it before they can regroup fully." "We've taken a lot of damage," Marcus, the engineer, said. "Shields are at 30%. We can't keep this up much longer." Torres turned to him, her expression hardening. "We've come this far, and we're not stopping now. We hold the line, no matter what." The crew exchanged grim nods. Everyone knew the stakes. The Empire's retaliation was inevitable, and this next phase of the battle would test everything they had. Across the dark expanse of space, the remnants of the Empire's fleet moved in formation, a dangerous wave of ships gathering speed as they prepared for their final assault. The energy in the air was palpable. The enemy was angry, and they had nothing left to lose. But the Vanguard was ready. "Target their lead ships," Torres ordered. "Take out their command vessels first." They won't be able to organize without leadership. Firing solution locked, Nash replied, his fingers flying across the console. The Vanguard's weapons were fully charged again, its cannons humming with power. The enemy opened fire, their weapons lighting up the void. The Vanguard dodged and weaved, its agile design allowing it to avoid some of the oncoming blasts. But the sheer number of enemy ships made it impossible to avoid all of them. Energy blasts slammed into the Vanguard's shields, shaking the ship with each hit. Shields holding at 20%, Marcus reported, his voice strained. We can't take much more of this. Brace for impact. Torres shouted. She could feel the ship rocking under the pressure, but there was no turning back. The Vanguard had to push through the storm of enemy fire. They had to finish what they started. Prepare to fire on my mark, Torres ordered. She knew they had one chance to turn the tide completely. If they could break through the enemy's front lines and take out the remaining heavy ships, the battle would be over. But the cost would be high. The Vanguard surged forward, cutting through the enemy fleet like a blade. The ship's weapons unleashed a deadly barrage of fire, tearing into the lead enemy ships. One by one, the Empire's vessels exploded, the debris scattering across the battlefield. But the Empire wasn't backing down. Their fire grew more intense, their ships closing in, determined to destroy the Vanguard. The battle had become a deadly game of cat and mouse. Enemy ships closing in fast. Sergeant Lee warned, "We're surrounded." The Vanguard was in a perilous situation. The smaller enemy ships were closing in from all directions, and the larger capital ships were preparing for another devastating attack. Torres knew they couldn't keep up the evasive maneuvers forever. Lieutenant Nash, can we overload the weapons for one final strike? Torres asked, her voice calm but urgent. Nash's fingers flew across the console as he worked, his brow furrowed in concentration. I can do it, but it'll overload the main cannons. After one shot, we'll be without weapons. Do it, Torres said without hesitation. We don't have a choice. The Vanguard's main cannons hummed to life, a violent glow erupting from the ship's hull. The overload had charged the weapons beyond their usual limits, and the energy was building to catastrophic levels. Overload complete, Nash said, his voice tight. One shot, Commander. Make it count. Torres stood tall, her heart racing in her chest. For humanity, she said, a grim smile crossing her lips. Fire. The Vanguard unleashed its final shot, a beam of pure destructive energy that tore through the heart of the Empire's remaining fleet. The blast hit one of their massive command ships square in the center, obliterating it in an instant. The shockwave rippled out, and the surrounding ships were thrown into disarray. The Empire's fleet faltered, its ships colliding with each other as they tried to regain control. Direct hit. The flagship is down, Nash shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. The fleet is falling apart. The Empire's once imposing armada was now in chaos. The loss of their remaining command ships sent the fleet into disarray, and the ships that hadn't been destroyed were now retreating. The remaining fighters scattered, no longer organized, and their attacks grew erratic. Enemy fleet is retreating, Sergeant Lee exclaimed. We did it. They're breaking off. Torres breathed a sigh of relief. The battle was far from over, but they had won. The Empire's reign of terror had finally been broken. The Vanguard had held the line, and humanity had proven once again that it was not to be underestimated. We're not out of the woods yet, Torres said, her voice steady, but this is a victory for humanity. The crew erupted into cheers, but Torres kept her focus on the battlefield. She knew that the Empire might return one day, but for now, humanity had shown its strength. The Vanguard had survived the impossible, and the galaxy would never forget the day Earth's prototypes crushed the Empire's fleet. The dust of battle had settled, but the silence that followed was deafening. The once mighty Galactic Empire fleet lay in ruins, scattered across the vast expanse of space. Only the wreckage remained, floating aimlessly, a grim testament to their overwhelming defeat. The Empire had been brought to its knees by one ship, a single prototype that had outclassed their entire fleet. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Commander Rachel Torres stood, staring out at the wreckage of the enemy fleet. Her heart still raced, and though the cheers of her crew echoed in the background, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling of unease. This battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Empire, humiliated as they were, would not forget this defeat. They would regroup, and they would return. "Commander," Lieutenant Nash's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood beside her, his face serious. "We've picked up strange signals. They're weak, but there's definitely something out there." Torres turned, her brow furrowed. "Another fleet?" "No," Nash replied, shaking his head. "Not a fleet. It's a single ship. It's sending out a distress signal. But it's coming from within the Empire's core systems." "Within their core systems?" Torres repeated, her interest piqued. "Could it be a trap?" "It's hard to say," Nash answered, "but it's the only signal that's been detected. It's possible someone survived the battle." Torres knew the Empire had many enemies, and the possibility that one of their own ships had survived was not out of the question. It could be a last-ditch effort to bring reinforcements or even an internal rebellion. Either way, she wasn't about to take any chances. "Lieutenant, get us a course. We're going to investigate," Torres ordered, her voice resolute. "Prep the Vanguard for another journey. This isn't over yet." As the crew moved to carry out their orders, Torres couldn't help but wonder what they would find. The victory over the Empire was a significant one, but it had only been one battle in a much larger war. She had no illusions about the challenges ahead, but humanity had proven something important that day. They were more resilient than anyone had ever given them credit for. The Earth's prototypes, which had been written off as outdated and obsolete, had now changed the course of history. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And Torres, standing on the brink of a new chapter in their fight for survival, knew that they were ready for whatever came next. "Commander," Sergeant Lee spoke up from across the bridge. "We've received word from Earth. They've picked up our signal. They're proud of us." Torres allowed herself a small smile. "As they should be. We've done the impossible. But there's still more to be done, right?" Lee asked, a grin forming on his face. Torres nodded. "Yes, but for now, we've earned our victory. Let's not forget that. The rest will come in time." As the Vanguard turned toward the unknown signal, the crew watched the remains of the Empire's fleet slip further behind them, their legacy of terror now nothing more than a memory. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. Humanity had proven its strength, and now, with Earth's dreadnoughts leading the way, they would show the galaxy what true power looked like. "We're ready," Torres muttered to herself, her resolve solidifying. "Let's make sure they never forget." The Vanguard sped off toward the distant signal, a new journey beginning on the horizon. And though the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear: humanity had just started to make its mark on the galaxy.